The U.S. economy had experienced rapid economic growth and financial excesses in the late 1920s, and initially, the economic downturn was seen as simply part of the boom-bust-boom cycle. The cycle continued to fall for 3.5 years. Throughout the industrial world, cities were hit hard during the Great Depression, beginning in 1929 and lasting throughout most of the 1930s. Worst hit were port cities, and cities that depended on heavy industries, such as steel and automobiles. The Depression hit hardest to those nations that were most deeply in debt to the United States, for example, Germany and Great Britain. The map shows each place and how many people became unemployed due to the Great Depression. At the same time of the Great Depression, there was a major banking crisis, including the Wall Street crash in October 1929. The situation was aggravated by serious policy mistakes of the Federal Reserve Board, which led to a fall in money supply and further contraction of the economy. The economic situation in Germany, map 2, was made worse by the enormous debt. Countries that were dependent on the export of primary products, such as those in Latin America, were already suffering a depression in the late 1920s. More efficient farming methods and technology changes meant that the supply of agriculture products was rising faster than demand, and prices were falling as a consequence. Initially, the governments of the producer countries stockpiled their products, but this depended on loans from the United States and Europe. When these were recalled, the stockpiles were released onto the market, causing prices to collapse and the income of primary producing countries to fall drastically.
Prior to the Great Depression, governments traditionally took little or no action in times of business downturn, relying instead on impersonal market forces to achieve the necessary economic correction. But market forces alone proved unable to achieve the desired recovery in the early years of the Great Depression. And this painful discovery eventually inspired some fundamental changes in the United States economic structure. The Depression had profound political implications. In countries such as Germany and Japan, reaction to the Depression brought about the rise to power of militarists. But there were many positive philosophers that were affiliated with the Great Depression. I picked only a few to talk about, but there's so much more. Karl Brannan, 1888 to 1985, what he basically did was improve employment opportunities. Mary U. Ferguson, 1901 to 1982, was a senator of Washington from 1935 to 1941 and was a fierce advocate for social justice and peace.
A Monetary History of the United States, 1867 to 1960, is a book written in 1936 by Nobel Prize-winning economists Milton Friedman and Anne J. Schwartz. It collects together historical data.
The Roaring Twenties refers to a time after World War I. It was a period of economic prosperity. After the war, a new era was born, an era of large-scale diffusions and use of automobiles, telephones, motion pictures, and technology-based industrial growth. There was a significant change in lifestyle and culture. Everyone felt this was their time to make money and start a new dream, and because there was money in the stock market, everyone was buying. This accelerated consumer demand, shooting the prices up, and in order to buy, many people were borrowing money, anticipating that the price of stocks would keep increasing. Finally, the price of the stock market reached its high, and the Wall Street crash of 1929 ended this era. People and companies that borrowed money in order to buy stocks were now in debt. This started the Great Depression, the Dirty 30s. Due to this, many people were out of money and work. Food was running low. 60% of men and 82% of women in Canada made less than $1,000 a year. It was said by the Federal Department of Labor that families needed about $1,500 a year in order to maintain the minimum standard of decency. This meant that most families were not meeting the minimum, and due to the 1928 wheat crash, the country could not meet its needed amount to make a profit. Then banks began to fail. During the 1930s, over 9,000 banks failed. This left all the people with savings in those banks to lose their money. And surviving banks, worried about their own welfare, stopped giving out loans. Since people were worried about money, the purchase of items stopped, leading to a reduction in the number of items produced and eventually a reduction in workers.